Let's be honest. We live in a world where it feels like everything is trying to get under your skin. One text, one email, one passive-aggressive comment, and your entire day can spiral. And you start wondering. We all know what it's like to feel hijacked by a moment, rattled by something small, triggered by something we probably shouldn't care about, but we still do. But here's the real question. What if you could train yourself to stop giving so much energy to what doesn't deserve it? What if you could walk into a storm and not flinch? What if you could carry peace even when the world is pushing your buttons? This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's not about being fake or heartless or numb. It's about learning to master your internal world so the external world doesn't have so much control over you. Because the people who succeed long term, in leadership, in relationships, in life, aren't the ones who never feel pressure. They're the ones who know how to respond instead of react. So today, we're going to unpack something powerful: how to act as if nothing bothers you. Not to fake strength, but to build it from the inside out. Not to escape your emotions, but to stop letting them rule your decisions. Stop letting them rule your decisions. And if you can do that, if you can practice that mindset, then you stop playing defense. Start leading your life with clarity, courage, and calm. Let's begin. We live in a world where the loudest person in the room often gets the most attention, where reacting quickly is mistaken for being strong, and silence is misunderstood as weakness. But let me tell you, real strength doesn't shout. It doesn't slam doors or fire off angry replies. Real strength shows up in restraint, in that quiet confidence that doesn't need to prove itself. And that's what it means to act as if nothing bothers you. Not because you're numb, not because you don't feel anything, but because you've learned how to feel something deeply and still not let it control you. That's emotional maturity. That's leadership. There's a misconception that people who act calm under pressure are simply better at hiding it, that they're just stuffing things down. But true restraint isn't about burying emotion, it's about channeling it. It's the difference between a fire burning wildly and a fire that's been harnessed. Controlled, focused, productive. One destroys, the other powers everything forward. Now here's the part no one talks about. Restraint takes work. A lot of it. It's not natural. We're wired to protect ourselves, to defend, to lash out when we're hurt or threatened. But just because something is natural doesn't mean it's useful. You reacting is easy. It's instinct. But leadership, personal leadership, means you learn to pause. You learn to observe the emotion before you obey it. When someone insults you, when they misjudge you, when the situation is completely unfair, what do? That's the test. Most people retaliate. Most people explain, defend, attack. But those who lead themselves well know that not every fire needs their oxygen. Not every jab deserves a counterpunch. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Not because you're afraid, but because you've already decided who you are, and you don't need every situation to validate that. It's restraint that helps you walk away from the argument when you've already made your point. It's restraint that keeps you from sending the text you'll regret. It's restraint that allows you to sit with the discomfort of being misunderstood, without needing to over-explain yourself to people who weren't trying to understand you in the first place. That's emotional maturity. That's what it means to act unbothered, not by pretending you don't care, but by proving that you don't need to react in order to be okay. The beauty of restraint is that it creates space, space to think, space to lead, space to make decisions that align with who you're becoming, not just how you feel in the moment. And the more you exercise it, the more natural it becomes. At first, it's hard. Everything in you wants to snap back, to defend yourself, to prove a point. But over time, you begin to realize, I don't need to attend every argument I'm invited to. I don't need to win every fight to prove I'm strong. That shift is powerful. Because when your identity is no longer tied to the emotion of the moment, you're free. You're grounded. You're not thrown off course every time someone tests your patience or questions your worth. You stop being a slave to your environment and start becoming the thermostat, not reacting to the temperature, but setting it. This doesn't mean you never get upset. It doesn't mean you never feel angry, or hurt, or frustrated. It means you've trained yourself to pause before you proceed, to acknowledge the emotion without allowing it to dictate your next move. And that pause, that's where the real work happens. That's where the leader inside you takes over. It says, yes, I feel it, but I don't have to act on it. That's restraint. And it's not weakness. It's control, it's clarity, it's maturity in action. People will notice it too. They may not say it, but they'll feel it. The way you carry yourself, the way you don't overreact, the way you stay rooted while everything around you is trying to shake you, it's noticeable. And more than that, it's inspiring, because in a world that's constantly reacting, the calm presence of someone who doesn't flinch becomes magnetic. Flinch becomes magnetic. So if you want to lead yourself well, if you want to act like nothing bothers you, start by practicing restraint, not to impress others, but to protect your peace. Not to hide how you feel, but to elevate how you choose to respond. Because in the end, it's not the noise you make that proves your strength. It's the silence you choose that shows it. One of the most powerful lessons you can ever learn is this: you don't owe everyone a reaction. And once you truly internalize that, your entire life starts to feel lighter, freer, and a whole lot more peaceful. Because here's what happens. We go through our days with this unspoken pressure, this internal need to respond to everything, every rude comment, every opinion we disagree with, every look, every tone, every piece of criticism, every passive-aggressive post. And somewhere deep down, it feels like if we don't respond, we're weak, we're letting people win, we're being walked over. That's not true. That's emotional ego talking, not strength. Reacting to everything doesn't prove you're in control. It usually proves you're not. Real strength is knowing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. And most things, they don't. Most people aren't actually trying to engage with you. They're projecting. They're venting. They're throwing darts in the dark, hoping someone bites. When you react, you validate them. You give them power. And worse, you give them access to your peace. And for what? To be right in the moment? There's a difference between protecting your boundaries and defending your ego. One comes from strength, the other comes from insecurity. The stronger you get internally, the less you feel the need to explain yourself constantly. You stop defending every choice. You stop attending every debate. You stop proving your worth to people who were never interested in understanding you in the first place. That's where emotional intelligence meets emotional independence. When you can hear something that would have triggered you a year ago, and now it barely moves you. When you can watch someone criticize you, and instead of fighting back, you see it for what it really is, a reflection of them, not you. That's growth. That's evolution. That's when your mind becomes stronger than your emotions. There's a kind of quiet confidence that shows up when you start choosing where and how you invest your energy. Not every battle is yours. Not every hill is worth dying on. Some things, most things, are better left unbothered. And it's not about being passive. It's not about turning your back on injustice or avoiding necessary conversations. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb. It's about becoming emotionally wise, knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, knowing when to walk away not out of fear, but out of strength. Knowing when your presence alone says more than any argument ever could. Because let's face it, some people thrive on reactions. They poke and prod because they want control. And when you react without thinking, they get it. They win. But when you don't react, when you keep your composure, when you don't flinch, you keep your power, you show them. And more importantly, you show yourself that you don't need to be loud to be strong. And you'll start to notice something beautiful. The less you respond to meaningless things, the more energy you have for meaningful things, the more space you create in your life for peace, for focus, for progress. You stop burning fuel on every little inconvenience and start conserving your strength for what really matters. You begin to act like someone who understands their worth, not someone constantly trying to prove it. And that's what this is about. It's about training your mind to be selective. To know the difference between what's urgent and what's important, what's noise and what's truth, what's trying to provoke you and what's actually trying to help you grow. Because every time you choose not to react, you're not running away. You're rising above. You're rising above. You're practicing the kind of discipline that very few people master. You're telling the world and reminding yourself that not everything needs your time, your words, your validation. Some things deserve nothing more than your silence. So the next time someone tries to get under your skin, pause, hagori, can you breathe? Ask yourself, do I really need to respond to this? Or would silence speak louder? Would peace serve you better? Because not every trigger deserves your attention. Not every battle is worth the war, and not every voice deserves a seat at your table. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is no move at all. There's a reason the strongest people in the room are often the quietest. It's not because they don't have anything to say. It's because they've learned the value of stillness. They've learned the value of stillness. They've learned that composure isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's strategy. It's the steady hand in the storm, the calm breath in the chaos. Stillness isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing exactly what's needed. No more, no less. The world moves fast. There's pressure to respond immediately, react quickly, stay visible, stay loud. But when you live like that, constantly chasing noise, you lose touch with your center. You start living at the mercy of the moment. That's how people get burned out. That's how leaders lose perspective. That's how relationships crack, because we forget that not everything needs to be said right now, and not every situation requires a reaction. When you act as if nothing bothers you, stillness becomes your edge. You stop letting emotions steer the wheel. You stop letting people's opinions rush you into decisions. You stop jumping into every storm that passes by. Instead, you step back. You breathe. You watch. You assess. And only then, only when you've grounded yourself, do you move. There's power in that kind of presence. People feel it. They sense the confidence in your pause, and that pause makes them pay attention. It's easy to overlook the noisy ones. They're everywhere. But someone who's quiet, someone who's composed, someone who doesn't flinch, that's someone who makes people lean in. Stillness isn't inaction. It's intentional. It's what allows you to process instead of panic. What helps you respond with clarity instead of reacting with confusion. When everything around you feels like it's demanding urgency, stillness says, let me decide if this is really urgent. Just because something is loud doesn't mean it's important. That pause, that presence, it's not natural. It's trained. It's developed. It comes from discipline. It comes from understanding that the louder the moment, the quieter you need to become. Not so you can shrink, but so you can see. Because you can't see clearly when your emotions are yelling over your judgment. You train stillness the same way you train strength, by choosing it over and over, especially when it's hard. When someone disrespects you, stillness says, I don't need to match that energy. When life throws uncertainty your way, stillness says, I can hold steady until the fog clears, until the fog clears. When you're tempted to speak just to fill the silence, stillness reminds you, silence can speak louder than anything I could say right now. You know what happens when you live with that kind of posture? You stop being so easily shaken. You stop chasing validation. You stop trying to control what's outside of you and start mastering what's inside of you. And what's inside of you, when it's trained, becomes unshakable. Stillness gives you access to your best decisions. It helps you lead from intention instead of insecurity. From intention instead of insecurity. It helps you notice what others miss because you're not busy reacting. You're busy watching. You're observing patterns, picking up on details, noticing tone, timing, and energy. That kind of awareness only comes when you're calm enough to see it. But let's be real, stillness is hard. Especially in a culture that rewards speed and noise. It's easy to think that if you're not doing something, saying something, posting something, you're falling behind. But here's the truth. Most of the progress you'll make in life won't come from what others can see. It will come from the quiet decisions you make in your own mind. The ones that happen when you choose to pause, to reflect, to breathe. So don't confuse stillness with passivity. It's not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right thing at the right time, for the right reason. And most of the time, that only becomes clear when you're willing to slow down enough to see it. That's why some of the most influential people in the world have trained themselves to respond with calm. Not because they're emotionless, not because they don't care, but because they've learned that if you can stay grounded when everything else is shaking, you become the anchor that others look to. So if you want to act as if nothing bothers you, start by training stillness. Build that inner core that doesn't get rattled every time life gets loud. Stand still long enough to listen to your own voice, not the chaos around you. Then, when it's time to move, move with purpose. Because in a world that's constantly reacting, stillness is your greatest strength. One of the greatest misunderstandings people have is this: they believe that in order to be strong, they have to stop feeling. That somehow emotional detachment means becoming robotic, distant, or cold. But let me ask you something. How can you lead with heart if you've buried your own? How can you show up fully if you've shut everything down just to survive the day? Emotional detachment is not the absence of emotion. It's the ability to observe your emotions without being owned by them. Tust. It's about developing enough internal clarity that you can feel without drowning, care without crumbling, and love without losing yourself. Because if every single thing rattles you, every comment, every look, every rejection, you'll spend your life reacting instead of responding. And that's not strength. That's fragility masked as passion. The key is learning how to pause, to give yourself just enough distance between stimulus and response so you can lead from intention, not impulse. That's emotional detachment. That's emotional detachment. It's stepping back far enough to ask, is this actually worth my energy? Is this really about me? Or are they just projecting their own pain? Is this battle necessary? Or is my ego just trying to prove something? When you can ask those questions without spiraling, you've begun to master emotional detachment. Now, I know what some people are thinking, but if I detach, won't I seem like I don't care? No. Caring doesn't mean reacting to everything. In fact, the people who care the most about their peace, about their values, about their relationships, are often the ones who've learned to let go of things that don't deserve their peace. They don't argue with fools. They don't chase closure from people who never had the capacity to offer it. They don't bleed energy into situations that are beneath their purpose. And none of that makes them cold. It makes them wise. See, when you're emotionally attached to everything, you're constantly tossed around. You hear a rumor. You spiral. Someone criticizes your idea. You shut down. You hit a roadblock. You doubt your entire journey. That kind of instability will break you before anything else ever does. So, the goal isn't to become numb. The goal is to become anchored. You feel everything, but you're not controlled by any of it. You can feel disappointment and still move forward with focus. You can feel anger and still speak with respect. You can feel fear and still choose courage. Emotional detachment is the space where you gain power over your emotions, not by ignoring them, but by acknowledging them and not letting them lead the way. And let's be honest, that takes work. It's not a switch you flip. It's a discipline you develop. It means practicing restraint when every part of you wants to lash out. It means taking a walk instead of sending that angry text. It means listening more than defending. And it means telling yourself, just because I feel this way right now doesn't mean I have to act on it. Uh, that's not cold. I get, that's not cold. That's control. You've probably met people who mistake emotional detachment for arrogance. They'll say, "Oh, you're so calm. Do you even care?" That's because they don't understand how powerful it is to sit in your storm and not flinch. They think shouting back makes you strong. Woo, furwa. But real strength is sitting in silence and not needing to be right. It's smiling and walking away. Not because you lost, but because you chose you over the chaos. This mindset doesn't just change your personal life. It changes how you lead. Because when you can detach from needing constant approval, you make bolder decisions. When you can detach from the fear of failure, you take smarter risks. And when you can detach from needing to control every outcome, you unlock creativity, trust, and collaboration in ways you've never imagined. So ask yourself, what's one thing you're emotionally attached to right now that's stealing your peace? Is it an opinion? A memory? A person? A pattern? Whatever it is, you don't have to cut it off completely. You just have to create space between you and it. Space to breathe, space to see clearly, space to choose differently, the ability to step back, to not let every emotion lead you. That's your superpower. And when you learn to master emotional detachment, not by hardening your heart, but by training your perspective, you don't lose your empathy. You enhance it. You enhance it. You don't lose your passion. You purify it. And you don't lose your connection. You protect it by leading with balance instead of burnout. Because the strongest version of you isn't the one who feels nothing. It's the one who knows how to feel everything and still keep walking forward with grace, wisdom, and fire in your soul. And that version of you is built in the quiet moments where emotions rise and you choose to lead anyway.